Shalom, welcome to Tactical Torah. I am Hugh Hayes. Today is day 91 of Read the Bible in a Year, and we are wrapping up 1 Samuel with chapters 26 through 31. So it's going to be a little bit of a longer reading, but not too much longer. All right, chapter 26, page 310 in the scriptures if you want to follow along. And the Ziphites came to Saul at Gabah, saying, "Is not David hiding himself in the hill of Hachilah, overlooking the wasteland?" And Saul rose up and went down to the wilderness of Ziph, and with him 3,000 chosen men of Israel, to seek David in the wilderness of Ziph. And Saul encamped in the hill of Hachilah, overlooking the wasteland by the way, while David was dwelling in the wilderness. And he saw that Saul came after him into the wilderness, and David sent out spies, and learned that Saul did indeed come. And David rose up and came to the place where Saul had encamped, and David saw a place where Saul lay, and Abner, son of Ner, the commander of his army, and Saul was lying within the enclosure with the encamped people, or with the people encamped all around him. And David spoke up and said to Ahimelech the Hittite, and to Abishai the son of Zeruiah, brother of Joab, saying, "Who does go down with me to Saul in the camp?" And Abishai said, I go down with you. And David and Abishai came to the people by night, and saw Saul lying asleep within the camp, with his spear stuck in the ground by his head. And Abner and the people lay all around him. And Abishai said to David, "Elohim has surrendered your enemy into your hand this day. And now please let me strike him at once with the spear right into the earth, and not a second time." But David said to Abishai, "Do not destroy him. For who shall stretch out his hand against the anointed of Yahweh and be guiltless?" David also said, "As Yahweh lives, except Yahweh does smite him, or his day come that he shall die, or he shall go out to battle and perish. Far be it from me, by Yahweh, that I stretch out my hand against the anointed of Yahweh. And now, please take the spear of the jug of water that are by the spear and the jug of water that are by his head, and let us go." So David took the spear and the jug of water by Saul's head, and they went away, and no man saw it or knew it or woke, for they were asleep, because of a deep sleep from Yahweh had fallen on them. And David passed over to the other side and stood at the top of the hill far away, for a great distance between them. And David called out to the people and to Abner, son of Ner, saying, "Do you not answer, Abner?" And Abner answered and said, "Who are you calling out to the sovereign?" And David said to Abner, "Are you not a man? And who is like you in Israel? Why then have you not guarded your master the sovereign? For one of the people came in to destroy your master the sovereign. What you have done is not good, as Yahweh lives. You are worthy to die, because you have not guarded the master, the anointed of Yahweh. And now see where the sovereign spear is in the jug of water that was by his head." And Saul recognized David's voice and said, "Is that your voice, my son David?" And David said, "It is my voice, my master, O sovereign." And he said, "Why is it that my master is pursuing his servant? For what have I done, and what evil is in my hand? And now, please, let my master the sovereign hear the words of his servant. If Yahweh has moved you against me, let him accept an offering. But if it is the children of men, then they are cursed before Yahweh, for they have driven me out today, that I should not join myself to the inheritance of Yahweh, saying, 'Go serve other mighty ones.' And now Do not let my blood fall to the earth before the face of Yahweh, for the sovereign of Israel has come out to seek a flea, as when one hunts a partridge in the mountains. And Saul said, I have sinned. Come back, my son David, for no more am I going to do evil to you, because my life was precious in your eyes today. See, I have acted foolishly and have greatly strayed. And David answered and said, See the sovereign spear, and let one of the young men come over and get it, and let Yahweh reward every man for his righteousness and his trustworthiness. For this day Yahweh gave you into my hand, but I would not stretch out my hand against the anointed of Yahweh. And see, as your life has been valued in my eyes today, so let my life be valued in the eyes of Yahweh, and let him deliver me out of all distress. And Saul said to David, Blessed are you, my son David, achieving much and indeed prevailing. Then David went on his way, and Saul returned to his place. Chapter 27. And David said in his heart, Now I shall perish by the hand of Saul some day. There is not better for me than to escape to the land of the Philistines. Then Saul shall give up searching me any longer. Searching for me any longer in any part of Israel, and I shall escape out of his hand. So David rose up and passed over with 600 men who were with him to Achish, son of Maoch, sovereign of Gath. And David dwelt with Achish at Gath, and he and his men, each man with his household. David with his 2 wives, Ahinoam the Israelitess, and Abigail the Carmelitess, Nabal's widow. And it was reported to Saul that David had fled to Gath, so he sought him no more. And David said to Achish, If I have found favor in your eyes, let them give me a place in some town in the country to dwell there. For why should your servant dwell in the royal city with you? And Achish gave him Siklag that day. That is why Siklag has belonged to the sovereigns of Judah to this day. In the time that David dwelt in the country of the Philistines came to be 1 year and 4 new moons. And David and his men went up and raided the Geshurites and the Girzites and the Amalekites. For those nations were inhabitants of the land from old, as you go to Shur, even as far as the land of Mitzrayim. When David had stricken the land, he left neither man nor woman alive, but took away sheep and cattle, donkeys and camels and garments, and returned and came to Achish. And Achish would say, Where have you made a raid today? And David would say, Against the south of Judah, or against the south of Jerahmeelites, or against the south of the Canaanites. David did not keep alive man or woman to bring news to Gath, saying, Lest they inform against us, saying, Thus David did. And this was his practice all the days that he dwelt in the country of the Philistines. And Achish trusted David, saying to himself, He has indeed made himself a stint to his people in Israel, and has become my servant forever. Chapter 28. And it came to be in those days that the Philistines gathered their armies for battle to fight with Israel, and Achish said to David, You know, of course, that you are to go out with me in the army, you and your men. And David said to Achish, Very well, you shall know that what your servant should do. And Achish said to David, Very well, I make you one of my chief guardians forever. And Samuel had died, And all Israel had mourned for him and buried him in Ramah in his own city. And Saul had put away the mediums and the spiritists from the land. And the Philistines were gathered and came and encamped at Shunem. And Saul gathered all Israel, and they encamped at Gilboa. And when Saul saw the army of the Philistines, he was afraid, and his heart trembled greatly. And Saul inquired of Yahweh, but Yahweh did not answer him, either by dreams or by Urim or by the prophets. Saul then said to his servants, "Find a woman who is a medium, to go to her, to inquire of her." And his servant said to him, "Look, there is a woman who is a medium at Endor." And Saul disguised himself and put on other garments and went, he and 2 men with him. And they came to the woman by night and said, "Please divine for me and bring up for me the one I shall name." But the woman said to him, "Look, you know what Saul has done, how he has cut off the mediums and the spiritists from the land. Why then do you lay a snare for my life to put me to death?" And Saul swore to her by Yahweh, saying, "As Yahweh lives, no punishment comes upon you for this matter." And the woman said, "Whom do I bring up for you?" So he said, "Bring up Samuel for me." When the woman saw Samuel, she cried out with a loud voice. And the woman spoke to Saul, saying, "Why have you deceived me? You yourself are Saul." And the sovereign said to her, "Do not be afraid. What did you see?" The woman said to Saul, "I saw a spirit coming up out of the earth." And he said to her, "What is his form?" And she said, "An old man is coming up, and he is covered with a mantle." And Saul knew that it was Samuel. And he bowed with his face to the ground and did obeisance. And Samuel said to Saul, "Why have you disturbed me by bringing me back up?" And Saul answered, "I am deeply distressed, for the Philistines are fighting against me, and Elohim has turned aside from me and does not answer me any more, neither by the prophets nor by dreams. So I have called you to reveal to me what I should do." Then Samuel said, "And why do you ask me, seeing Yahweh has turned aside from you and has become your enemy? And Yahweh has done for himself as he spoke to me, for Yahweh has torn the rein out of your hand and given it to your neighbor, to David, because you did not obey the voice of Yahweh nor execute his burning wrath upon Amalek. Therefore Yahweh has done this matter to you today. Further, Yahweh also gives Israel with you into the hand of the Philistines, and tomorrow you and your sons are with me. Yahweh also gives the army of Israel into the hand of the Philistines." And immediately Saul fell on the ground his complete length, and greatly feared because of the words of Samuel, and there was no strength in him, for he had eaten no food all day or night. And the woman came to Saul and saw that he had been greatly disturbed, and said to him, "See, your female servant has obeyed your voice, and I have put my life in my hands, and have listened to the words which you spoke to me. And now please listen to the voice of your female servant too, and let me set a piece of bread before you, and eat, so that you have strength when you go on your way." But he refused and said, "I am not going to eat." But his servants together with the woman urged him, and he listened to their voice. And so he rose from the ground and sat on the bed. And the woman had a fattened calf in the house, and she quickly slaughtered it. And she took flour and kneaded it and baked unleavened bread from it. And she brought it before Saul and his servants, and they ate and rose up and went away that night. Chapter 29. And the Philistines gathered their armies at Aphek, while Israel encamped by a fountain which is in Israel. And the princes of the Philistines were passing on by the hundreds and by the thousands, and David and his men were passing on in the rear with Achish. And the princes of the Philistines said, "Who are these Hebrews?" And Achish said to the princes of the Philistines, "Is this not David, the servant of Saul, sovereign of Israel, who has been with me these days or these years? And to this day I have found no evil in him since he came over." But the princes of the Philistines were wroth with him. And the princes of the Philistines said to him, "Send the man back, and let him return to the place which you have appointed for him, and do not let him go down with us to battle, lest in the battle he become our adversary. For with what could he appease his master, if not with the heads of these men? Is this not David, of whom they sang to each other in dances, saying, Saul struck his thousands and David his 10,000s? And Achish called David and said to him, "As Yahweh lives, you have been straight, and your going out and your coming in with me in the army is good in my eyes. For to this day I have not found evil in you since the day of your coming to me. But in the eyes of the princes you are not good. And now return and go in peace, and do no evil in the eyes of the princes of the Philistines." And David said to Achish, "But what have I done? And to this day, what have you found in your servant as long as I have been with you, that I should not go and fight against the enemies of my master the sovereign?" But Achish answered and said to David, I know that you are as good in my eyes as a messenger of Elohim. But the princes of the Philistines have said, "Let him not go up to battle with us, or up with us to the battle. And now arise early in the morning with your master's servants who have come with you, and as soon as you are up early in the morning and have light, then go." And David and his men rose up early to go in the morning to return to the land of the Philistines, and the Philistines went up to Israel. And it came to be, when David and his men came to Ziklag on the third day, chapter 30, verse 1, on the third day, that the Amalekites had invaded the south and Ziklag, and struck Ziklag, and burned it with fire. And they took captive the women and those who were there, from small to great, and they did not kill anyone, but they led them away and went their way. And David and his men came to the city and saw it burned with fire, and their wives and their sons and their daughters had been taken captive. And David and the people who were with him lifted up their voices and wept, and they had no more power to weep. And David's two wives, Ahinoam the Israelitess and Abigail the widow of Nabal the Carmelite, had been taken captive. And David was greatly distressed, for the people spoke of stoning him, because the being of all the people was grieved, for each for his sons and his daughters. But David strengthened himself in Yahweh his Elohim. And David said to Abiathar, the priest, the son of Ahimelech, "Please bring the shoulder garment here to me." So Abiathar brought the shoulder garment to David, and David inquired of Yahweh, saying, "Do I pursue his band? Do I overtake them?" And he answered him, "Pursue, for you shall certainly overtake them and certainly rescue." So David went, he and 600 men who were with him, and came to the Wadi Besor, where a halt was made by those who were left behind. While David pursued, he and 400 men for 200 men for 200 halted, who were too faint to pass over the Wadi Besor. And they found a man in the field, a Mitzrite, and took him to David. And they gave him bread, and he ate, and they let him drink water. Goodness. Hydration indicated. Good stuff. Coffee. Verse 12. Chapter 30, verse 12. And gave him a piece of cake of figs and 2 clusters of raisins. And when he had eaten, his strength came back to him, for he had not eaten bread nor drunk water for 3 days and 3 nights. David said to him, "To whom do you belong, and where are you from?" And he said, "I am a young man from Mitzrayim, servant of an Amalekite. And my master left me behind, for I had been sick 3 days. We attacked the south of the Kerethites and against that which belongs to Judah, and upon the south of Caleb, and we burned Ziklag with fire." And David said to him, "Could you bring me down to this marauding band?" And he said, "Swear to me by Elohim that you neither kill me nor surrender me into the hands of my master, then I bring you down to this marauding band." And he brought him down, and they saw they were spread out over all the land, eating and drinking and celebrating because of all the great spoil which they had taken from the land of the Philistines and from the land of Judah. And David struck them from the twilight until the evening of the next day, and none of them escaped except 400 young men who rode on camels and fled. And David rescued all that the Amalekites had taken. David also rescued his 2 wives. And there was none missing to them, whether small or great, whether sons or daughters or spoil or whatever they had taken from them. David recovered all. Besides, David captured all the flocks and the herds that they had driven before those livestock, and they said, "This is David's spoil." And David came to the 200 men who were too faint to follow David, who had also been left at the Wadi Besor. They went out to meet David and to meet the people who were with him. And when David came near the people, he greeted them, and all the evil and worthless men of those who went with David. And all the evil and worthless men of those who went with David answered and said, "Because they did not go with us, we do not give them any of the spoil that we have rescued, except for every man's wife and children, let him take them and go." But David said, "My brothers, do not do so with what Yahweh has given us, who has protected us and gave into our hand the band that came against us. And who would listen to you in this matter? For his portion is who goes down, for as his portion is who goes down for battle, so his portion who remains with the baggage. They share alike." And it came to be from that day forward, he appointed it for a law and a right ruling for Israel to this day. And when David came to Ziklag, he sent some of the spoil to the elders of Judah, to his friends, saying, "Here is a present for you from the spoil of the enemies of Yahweh, to those in Bethel, and to those in Ramoth of the south, and to those in Yatir, and to those in Aroer, and to those in Siphmoth, and to those in Eshtemoa, and to those in Rakal, and to those in the cities of Jerahmeelites, and to those in the cities of the Canaanites, and to those in Hormah, and to those in Korashan, and to those in Athak, and to those in Hebron, and to all the places where David had gone up and down, he and his men. And the Philistines were fighting against Israel, chapter 31, wrapping up 1 Samuel. And the Philistines were fighting against Israel, and the men of Israel fled from before the Philistines and fell slain on Mount Gilboa. And the Philistines followed hard after Saul and his sons, and the Philistines struck Jonathan and Abinadab and Malchishua, sons of Saul. And the battle went hard against Saul, and the archers hit him so that he was severely wounded by the archers. And Saul said to his armor-bearer, "Draw your sword and thrust me through with it, lest these uncircumcised men come and thrust me through and roll themselves on me." But his armor-bearer would not, for he was greatly afraid. So Saul took the sword and fell on it. And when his armor-bearer saw that Saul was dead, he also fell on his sword to die with him. Thus Saul died, and 3 of his sons, and his armor-bearer, also all his men together that day. And they saw the men of Israel who were beyond the valley, and those who were beyond the Jordan, that the men of Israel had fled, and that Saul and his sons were dead. So they forsook the cities and fled, and the Philistines came and dwelt in them. And the next day it came to be, when the Philistines came to strip the slain, that they found Saul and his 3 sons fallen on Mount Gilboa. And they cut off his head and stripped off his armor, and sent word throughout the land of the Philistines to announce it, that the house of their idols, to announce it in the house of their idols and to the people. And they placed his armor in the house of the Ashtaroth, and they fastened his body to the wall of Beth-shan. And the inhabitants of Yabesh Gilead heard what the Philistines had done to Saul. And all brave men arose and went out all night, and took the body of Saul and the bodies of his sons from the wall of Beth-shan, and they came to Yabesh and burned them there. And they took their bones and buried them under the teramish tree at Yabesh, and fasted for 7 days. All right, that's the end of 1 Samuel. Boy, there's some stuff there. Couldn't imagine. Anyways, that's it. Tomorrow is 2 Samuel. Shalom.